The biggest thing in my mind that a late MCAT does to hurt your chances of getting into medical school is it.
Ask the Dean, episode 42. Scott Wright and Rachel Grubbs are here tonight. I think Dr. Gray is joining us in just a moment.
Hello. How's everybody tonight? How are you, Rachel?
I'm doing well.
Good.
How are you?
Yeah, doing really well. It's a beautiful day in Austin, Texas. Sunny and 85 degrees. It's really nice.
So poor Ryan has several feet of snow.
Oh, that's right.
And he's also having some technical difficulties. He said when he tried to log on, we sounded like robots. And at first I thought he meant like you should emote more. But he actually means he's having technical issues. There's Dr. Gray.
Woohoo!
All right.
Have no fear, I am here.
Yay!
Well, we're thrilled. We like it best when it's all three of us.
Yes, the trifecta.
Indeed. The triumvirate.
Yeah, the triumvirate. That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
So
we've
got one pre-asked question. If you want to tackle that, Ryan.
Yeah, it says,
there we go.
I'm a junior by credits who came to college with dual enrollment credits. Because of the credits I came in with, I can take 12 credits per semester and graduate within 4 years. I've been taking 12 credits per semester since my freshman year, and my only B is from high school dual enrollment. Will medical schools look down upon this lower course load despite my 4.0 university GPA? Very, very, very common question. Total credits, and how does that look? 12 credits is considered full-time, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely it is.
Yeah.
Anything between 12 and 18 is full-time course load. So, I mean, I don't think that it'll affect anything with regard to the admissions committee looking at the record. In fact, I think many on an admissions committee wouldn't even notice, probably.
Yep.
So I don't think you need to worry about anything.
Not a worry. Usually, and let's always give context, right? Because this question comes up a lot, specifically to us in the non-traditional world. Mm-hmm. Students who struggled early on, who are trying to overcome poor early undergraduate GPAs, and now we're working full-time or have family to support, and they can only do 2 classes a semester or something like that. And then there's big concern. Like, well, I'm getting 4.0s now, but I'm only doing 2 classes a semester. Is that going to be enough? Right?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a little bit different story. I think that what they want to see, what admissions committees really want to see is full-time course load. What are you going to be able to do? And now, if that's optimal. If you can do full-time course load, pull great grades in full-time all sciences, that's optimal. Acceptable if you're got to work and you can't pull full-time courses, then you do what you can do. And I think the admissions committees will understand that and will look at how you're balancing everything and what you're doing, because you're obviously going to describe everything in your application and how this is played out and what you're doing now, and et cetera. So, optimally, you do full-time course load. Acceptably, then you got to do well however many courses you're taking.
Yeah. It's funny when students ask that question, they're usually asking it retroactively, right? After they've already done it.
Right.
And the question is, why ask the question? There's nothing you can do about it right now. It is what it is. It's your specific story. It's your specific situation. You're going to hopefully get in somewhere, but there's literally nothing you can do about it now. So why stress about it other than they want
validation for what they've already done, and that's what they're looking for. So
Human psychology is such a fragile thing.
Right.
Yeah.
That's funny.
It is, especially when you've been living your whole life dreaming of this career.
Yeah, and that's it, right? There's so much fear surrounding it, and I understand it, especially when I didn't get into school the first time. It's like, like I just got told I'm never going to be a doctor, right? Which is literally not what anybody was telling me. I just didn't get into school the first time I applied. But there's so much fear surrounding whatever situation a student is in, going, is this going to prevent me from this dream? And the answer to almost every single fear and question is it won't prevent you.
Yeah.
At all.
And I want to bring forward something that you alerted me to, Ryan.
Oh, yes.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
I do know.
And I think it fits exactly with what we're talking about right now.
Yep.
And that is this quote from James Sherman. And I looked up James Sherman, and I don't know if this is the right James Sherman. We had a James Sherman that was vice president of the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
It could be him, or it might be a different James Sherman.
I think it's a different one.
Okay. So this is James Sherman, Ph.D.
Yep.
Whoever he is. I love his quote. And the quote is, you can't go back and make a new start, but you can start right now and make a brand new ending.
Yep.
Awesome, awesome quote. I'm going to try to figure out how to get that on my Instagram. If I can figure out how to make a meme. Oh, there you go.
Got it there.
There you go.
I love it. That's
fantastic.
what so many students are in this situation,
Yep.
worried about the start. And there's nothing you can do about it right now, but you can for sure start right now and fix it, right? It's the same exact quote and just in a different way of when's the best time to plant a tree 20 years ago? When's the second best time? Right now.
Yeah.
Right,
right now. Right.
It is what it is.
That's right. Yep. That's right.
Cool.
So take that, all of you out there who maybe didn't have the best start to your undergraduate career, or maybe you decided later and your whole undergraduate career was awful or whatever.
Yep.
Think of this quote: start now, making a new ending. Yeah. So
there's a student who messaged me earlier on Facebook. So today's the day where medical students are notified whether or not they matched. They won't find out. Match day isn't until Friday.
Yeah.
But today is you matched, relax for the rest of the week. Or exactly.
Yeah, it's so wild.
Yeah.
They get an email that's like, you matched, and then it goes on to tell them about how they don't qualify for the failure program. Yeah. I'm like, I can't believe you have to wait 5 days to know where you matched.
Yeah. But this one student is a student who I had on the podcast a while ago. He struggled really, really hard in undergrad. He went to BYU for undergrad, and he had a family, had kids, right? Typical Mormon family, starting early. And so he had a lot of responsibilities very early, and he struggled because of that. He did a post-bac, had all of those same responsibilities, struggled, applied to Caribbean schools going, I'll take the easy way out, right? I'll just go to a Caribbean school. They said, yeah, no, thanks. Caribbean schools rejected this student. And so he finally, I think he found my podcast, and he had an amazing advisor, someone we both know, or we all know, with Kristen Anderson. Yeah. And he did an SMP, and he finally did what was needed. He stopped working. He went on to social service programs like food stamps and other things so that he could focus on what he needed to focus on. And guess what? He's actually a good student. He just didn't have the time to dedicate to being a good student. Right. And he did really well in his SMP, got into multiple medical schools, and today found out that he matched into a surgical program. He wants to be a general surgeon.
Awesome. So, that is awesome. Woohoo.
He made a new ending for himself.
How cool is that? I love getting emails from people like that where there's, and we can celebrate with them. It's really cool. Yeah. I love the match that everybody in the country finds out on the same day where they're going.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
awesome.
It's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
It is cool. Yeah.
A lot of people don't like the match. They think it's old, archaic, and disadvantages people. But I think it's the exact opposite. But it's a very interesting program.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. Cool.
All right.
More questions.
Do you advise going to a school for specific certifications, for example, medical assistant, for clinical experience, or scribing enough clinical experience? I know some schools don't see that as clinical. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I like scribing. I think it is good experience and stuff, but a lot of scribing, you're not, you're just kind of a passive observer in the room, and you're really not able to do anything. Now, and it also depends on who the physicians are that you're scribing for in terms of how engaged they're going to be with you, and showing you stuff, and all that kind of thing. A medical assistant, you're going to have a lot more direct patient contact.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's an awesome experience, and I think MAs are a really great experience for students to get. If you have time to go get certification, you can go to community colleges typically and get certification to be an MA, but some clinics, doctors' offices will hire you and do the training themselves. Mm-hmm. So it kind of just depends on what you can find and things like that. But, as to this question, we get this a lot, Ryan, with what's better, or what's, is this good, or is that better, or whatever. And I would say do what you if you get the opportunity to be a medical assistant, might be a good experience for you. Neither one of them is going to pay very well, so you need to be prepared for that. But I mean,
Yep.
what are your thoughts, Ryan?
I go back to do the one that you think is going to interest you.
Yeah.
Obviously, being a medical assistant is going to be potentially a little bit more similar to, and I wouldn't even say that. I was going to say be more similar to actually taking care of patients, because you're interacting with them, taking blood pressure, etc. Right. But the whole charting side of it is taking care of patients as well. So I wouldn't even say that one is better in the long run. Yeah. And so, I think go back to what you said. I would go back to what you said. Being a medical assistant, where I am in Colorado, you don't need a license for it. You don't need a certification. You can go to a private practice and do on-the-job training. And so look at your specific state's requirements. Do they require certification? If they do, then you have to take a course. If they don't, then you can potentially find a private practice that's willing to train you. And that's where we have such amazing resources like YouTube, where you can log on and go, how to take a blood pressure, how to take a patient history, how you can learn all of these questions and show up a little bit more prepared than someone else.
Yep, definitely.
But in terms of, is one better than the other? I don't think so. And yes, there are some schools that don't like scribing as clinical experience, and that's their loss.
Yeah, agreed. All right.
What's the best way to get a feel of schools when choosing what school to apply to? The mission statement is sometimes too vague. Is the best way to see campus, culture, diversity, etc., without visiting because of COVID? I would say without visiting, period, because there really is no such thing as this college tour.
Right.
Where you can show up on a specific day, but most medical schools don't have just drop-in times where you can just go hang out whenever you want.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
How do you figure this out?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to, Zoom as much as possible and figure out, I would say try to connect with students at that school any way you can. Sometimes you can contact the admissions office and get, not for a tour or whatever, but get, student information, give them, connect somehow with students that way. Connecting with students is a great way to learn about the culture of the school. And my experience with current medical students is they're going to be gut level honest with you about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And, they're going to really tell you the way it is and what they like and don't like. And sometimes it depends on the day of the week. Was a test today, and so they think the world sucks right now, or what's going on. So that may dictate how they feel about school at the particular time. But
yeah, I mean, that's a good thing to point out, right? I think a lot of students, not just specifically med school related, but just medicine related, will talk to residents and be like, the residents are miserable. I'm like, yeah, they're miserable. Don't listen to them.
Right.
It's a very bad season in their life. It's a very hard time in their life.
Yeah.
I think I've talked about it before. I don't know if we've talked about it specifically live in public, but there's some big opportunities that we can potentially do with Mapped, things that I've tried to do with medical school headquarters in terms of gathering reviews of medical schools so that current and former students can really be open and candid and talk about their experience with the school in some sort of an anonymous but verified way. And so we're definitely thinking about how to integrate that into Mapped and the school lists and building a school list. So it's just a lot of research. I've talked about it previously, just looking at social media channels, looking at YouTube channels, looking. And the one potential place where I do recommend going the Student Doctor Network is going onto the school specific threads.
Yes.
And seeing what students are talking about, asking questions there for each school.
Agreed.
Yep. It's a good question. It's not an easy answer.
That's right. That is right.
Does it look bad to take more upper level science courses to be a more competitive candidate for your dream school? Or will it look like GPA padding?
I think it depends on the classes you're taking. My experience with upper level science courses is that ain't gonna pad your GPA. Now if you're taking underwater basket weaving, then then that may be seen as padding your GPA. But upper level science courses, no, I don't think it would ever be viewed that way.
Yeah, I was trying to think of some snarky thing to add on to underwater basket weaving to make it a BCPM course. the mathematics of underwater basket weaving,
and the physics of it. There you go.
Physics,
the physics of it. That's funny. Wonder where that ever came from. Underwater basket weaving. I mean, I've heard that forever.
Yeah.
As
what's the other one? Do you know the other one? The other one, Rocks for Jocks. That's always popular.
That's geology.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
I took geology because I really loved it in college, and the guy who sat next to me was Eddie George.
Nice.
Nice.
I was like, well, there's one football player in this classroom.
Well, I have several friends who are geologists, one of whom is a Ph.D. geologist, and that's no easy stuff there. So, I mean, I guess for non-users might be, but I don't know.
Well, it's funny. I've never met anyone who actually took basket weaving, but I've met lots of people who've studied geology.
Yes, exactly. That's why I'm wondering where that sort of came from. I don't know.
Yeah.
I Googled it.
Yeah.
And there's an issue of the American Philatelist, whatever that is, from 1956 that refers to an Alaskan village where, quote, underwater basket weaving is the principal industry of the employables among the 94 Eskimos here.
Really?
Something. So
how fascinating is that?
Yeah.
I feel like I don't want to make that reference anymore.
It's
poking fun at underestimated people.
The phrase in its pejorative sense has been used since at least the mid 1950s. See, that doesn't make sense. Why quote a 1956 article when they're saying, according to a 1953 article in the Boston Globe, any SNAP course in school is, quote, underwater basket weaving. So, I don't know.
So we're using it properly, of course.
One of our students just chimed in that they took a wine tasting elective.
Nice.
Oh, I took the history of sports, and it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
It was a phenomenal course. It was specifically football, was the topic that I took, and it basically was the history of every football team. Where it
Oh
came
wow,
from
how
and,
cool is that?
like,
I would have
why-
loved that.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. Why the Chicago Cubs are called the Cubs? You know why they're called the Cubs?
I have no idea.
Because when they were formed, they played at the same field where the Bears played, and so they were considered like the little baby bears. They were the Cubs.
Oh,
So
they're cute.
It's really good history on all the sports teams and where their names come from and all fun stuff.
Yeah. In part of my personal world, bears and cubs mean different things, and so
Yes. And that class is a memorable one for me because that's the class I was sitting in during 9/11.
Yeah.
Oh wow, really?
We're all listening to the radio,
Wow.
trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, right. Crazy.
All right, friends, I'm going to bring us back to pre-med.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah,
so
good idea.
despite our little chit-chatty at the end there, the student wanted to know if I take a bunch of upper-level science courses, is that padding? And absolutely not. That is showing your ability to handle academic rigor. So as long as they are those upper-level science courses, go for it.
Yes.
And
is it worth retaking a C in a prerequisite class? If you already did well in the upper division class, for example, retaking Bio 1, if you already have an A in cell bio, the thought process here is that prerequisite classes are graded tougher as they are weed out classes. Says who?
Yeah.
And that prerequisite grades are most important. Says who? Or is that just a myth? All right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a myth. I don't think that at all. I don't think retaking the C in Bio 1, if you really done well in bio classes thereafter, I think that's a little silly. So I wouldn't do it. No.
This is a very common question where I focus on the response is typically students are very, very focused in on the micro. And I always try to pull them back to the macro.
Yep.
The macro is, what are your grades? What are your trends? What does that look like? Not medical schools aren't sitting there going, okay, what did they get in Bio 1? Okay, great. What did they get in Chem 1? Okay, good. Okay, what did they get in Orgo 1? Right. They're not
right.
That's not that in the weeds. They're like,
Yeah.
big picture, what does this look like?
Yeah, exactly. It's and I think it is a myth that prerequisite grades are more important than other grades. I don't think that's true. So yeah, and I've never heard that grading is tougher in prerequisite classes. I've never heard that in 30 years of higher ed. I've never heard that. So yeah, I think that's a myth as well.
I think, I absolutely think that's a myth. I can understand the perception because especially if you're taking them early in the college career, just adjusting to the way college courses are taught and the way they're graded. No matter. I mean, obviously I'm generalizing, but at most high schools, even if you're taking an extremely rigorous course, they're still breaking it down into little bits so that you know exactly when things are due and what work is done, and you have little bits of work. And I think for a lot of students, the big change in college is this change to self-sufficiency that just high school doesn't, by its very nature, doesn't really offer.
Right. Agreed.
All right.
How do you feel about self-paced distance courses at a state university for prereqs? I have the Chem, OChem, Biochem series to take, and since they're all taken sequentially, I'm hoping to knock them all out in an alternative path.
Eek. How do you do?
I have to try to ask a clarifying question here. Is this student basically saying, I want to take Chem, OChem, and Biochem all at the same time so that I don't have to take them sequentially? That's what it seems like, right? Taking them in an alternative path. Basically, like, I don't want to take them sequentially. I want to take them all at the same time. So I'm just going to do a self-paced.
Well, you can't. Yeah, that's not possible.
See, a question asker. They asked this 7 minutes ago, so hopefully they're still listening, waiting for this answer. Can you chime in and just explain what do you mean by an alternative path?
Yeah. And I also have questions about the distance course I know that biochem would be one that I could see being taught through distance education, but particularly on chem and OChem, obviously I have heard of chem courses like that where they send you a packet for the lab part that you do some lab, I guess, in your bathroom tub or something, or I don't know.
How many times has the FBI been called on these at-home lab packages?
I smelled something funny coming out of that house over there.
Yeah. So the student said some colleges offer them not on the same timeline as a traditional semester time.
Oh, I see.
Still take them sequentially.
Sequentially, yeah. Well, some med schools don't accept distance learning for prerequisite courses, and so you just need to know what schools you're applying to and whether or not they accept distance learning for those courses.
Yeah.
That would be my primary concern.
It might work for this first semester, and then schools are going to go back into in-person learning once the vaccine kind of rolls out more widespread. And then it's like, well, now you're going to need to take them in person.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a slightly different tack on this. So it for sure, what the guys said, online courses are currently under COVID being forgiven a little bit more. But what really makes me nervous here is the word self-paced. I've been doing online education since the internet existed, and live online where you have to show up and meet with a cohort and hold yourself accountable is enormously different than self-paced. And maybe you're the one who can do it, but the idea of doing self-paced work for those sciences sounds extremely challenging to me. I'm not saying it's impossible. Some people can do it, but usually it takes a real aptitude for the subject as well as a lot of discipline. So, I've done self-paced courses and done well, but I've never tried them with a science like that. And I don't know how it would go. I know if I tried to do that in math, I would fall apart. Like I'm an okay math student as long as I have a teacher I can see regularly. So that's just something I think you have to reflect on personally.
Yeah, agreed. I agree.
Alrighty. I'm interested in the logistics of in-state preferences. I've heard that Texas prioritizes in-state acceptances more than other states. Is that true? Are there other states that highly prioritize in-state students? Do all states prioritize in-state students? So what we're talking about is usually take funding from the state and in return prioritize educating residents of that state. So Scott, you're the Texas expert. Texas has a law for public medical schools. Only 10% maximum of that class for public medical schools can be out-of-state residents. Right. So yes, that is true for Texas. Baylor's a little wonky at, I think, 30%.
Yeah, about 30, 35.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say about 30, 35%.
Yeah, Ryan, you cut out just for a minute at the beginning of your...
Everyone's cutting out.
Sorry, friends. I guess we're having a little bit of audio lag. I was starting to say that, Ryan, you cut out right at the beginning. So if you just want to quickly say the public versus private thing again to make sure everybody got it, and then we can have Scott chime in.
Yeah, so public medical schools receive funding from the state and prioritize typically educating residents of that state. Private schools typically do not, although there are exceptions, as there are exceptions to the public schools as well.
Right. Now, I know Mississippi, for example, or I would say it's my understanding that Mississippi Medical School, University of Mississippi, takes 0 out-of-state residents. As I think Arkansas may be that way as well, University of Arkansas Medical School. So, there are more restrictive than Texas, and there are obviously less restrictive than Texas. And it also depends on what laws are in the state regarding how you establish residence. That for some states, it's pretty easy. For other states, it's really hard. Just depends on the state. So yeah, I think, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So University of Mississippi looks like one of the easiest medical schools to get into by all intents and purposes. Only 427 verified in-state applications. They accepted 165 students from those students. One person applied from out of state. They did not accept that one person or interview that one person.
Right.
Yeah. So this is where the MSAR comes in really handy. Just go to the schools and look. Here where I am, University of Colorado is a public medical school, but the majority of our students are out-of-state students. And there's a lot of question marks around that going, well, they accept more out-of-state students because they want more out-of-state tuition from out-of-state students. So they're just looking for a bigger payday. But I think there's potentially some misconception around that. Paying a portion of the in-state students' tuition, which makes up the difference between in-state versus out-of-state tuition. So just look around. University of Michigan is another very common one, has more out-of-state students as a public medical school. And then there are some private ones that are more exclusive to in-state as well. So
right.
Just look around.
Yeah.
That is one of the more common things that in my application renovation series, I'll look at a school list and a student is a resident of one state and the far majority of their schools are public out-of-state schools with very, very low acceptance rates for out-of-state students. And they didn't know any better. They looked at MCAT and GPA and said, oh, I have a shot because of my MCAT and GPA without understanding the residency aspect of it.
Yeah.
Do you know if public medical schools prefer to admit U.S. citizens over permanent residents or green card holders? So a little bit of a follow-up for that. Scott, as former director of admissions at UT Southwestern, if someone was a Texas resident, a green card holder, permanent resident, did you care if they were a citizen or a resident?
Nope.
Texas resident, period.
Yep. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, in terms of, I think just legally, they're like everyone else.
Yeah. They can establish, residence in the state, whatever, and so we didn't, make any differentiation between, whether they were a U.S. citizen or a green or a permanent resident.
Yep. Is a June MCAT too late to apply this cycle? All right, can I give my spiel on timelines?
Yeah, please do.
We're working on this for MAP, so this is exciting. But and I don't know if we'll get into the weeds, but this is the weeds that I like to get into. So May, everything opens up. All right, AMCAS, ACOMAS, TMD, SAS. Someone just died upstairs. all application services open up, and you can submit either that month or later that month or beginning of June, right? June 1st is kind of the historic date that we did for submitting medical school applications. In between submitting an application and secondary essays, there's usually a several week delay, assuming you are very early in submitting your applications. ACOMAS delays applications to medical schools by a few weeks, sending them mid-June. AMCAS delays applications, sending them typically third week of June. Medical schools have no clue what's going on before then. That first wave of applications goes out. Secondary essays start to hit your email inbox or your spam. Check your spam. And then historically, you turn those around in 2 weeks or so. And by the time all is said and done, you're looking at about second week, kind of mid-July, by the time secondary essays are starting to roll into medical schools. Medical schools also at that time, admissions committees, right? Dr. Wright, you can speak to this. They're finally finishing up the last cycle. Going, right. We're finalized. Our class is done. We don't have any more spots to fill. We're good.
Right.
I'm going to put my feet up for 2 minutes and take my vacation. And I'm going to come back August 1st and start digging through applications. All right. It's a very common timeline of end of July, beginning of August for when medical schools will go, okay, like
here we go again.
Let's stress. Here we go. Back into it. Right. And so a June MCAT, let's say it's the end of June, right? Let's just to give a date. That score doesn't come back until the end of July, is probably not going to hinder where you are in the grand scheme of things in terms of the application process. Now, there's a huge asterisk on that because the biggest thing in my mind that a late MCAT does to hurt your chances of getting into medical school is it gets in the way of your ability to write your personal statement, write your extracurricular descriptions, write your secondary essays, gather your letters of recommendations, do your school list, submit your applications early. That's where the biggest issue in my mind comes from. And so you can take a later MCAT as long as you're on top of everything else and you submit your applications to at least one school so you can go through the verification process for AMCAS and ACOMAS and get that over with while also studying for the MCAT and all that other stuff.
Mm-hmm. Agree with you completely.
As you should.
Yeah. Boom. Throwing some shade my way, I guess.
I think there's a lot of fear around, and I'm glad this fear is there, right? Because I've been a big voice in the pre-med community about rolling admissions. Not enough students know about it. Not enough students understand it. They just go, "Oh, the deadline is November,
Yeah.
so I'll apply then." I'm like, "No, like it
no.
Yeah. And that was a big part of my conversation at that admissions summit in Toronto. Was I had my team go and research medical schools' websites, and a large portion of them don't mention anything about rolling admissions. If they do mention rolling admissions, don't mention why it's important. Very few actually said, we encourage you to apply early because of rolling admissions.
Yep.
And it just like that kind of secrecy and non-transparency or obfuscation is one of my favorite words around that process really makes me mad. And so I'm glad students are asking about it because that means they understand that timing is important.
Yeah, agreed. Very important.
Yeah, it just, to your point, it gets so complex because it's not that MCAT date in and of itself. It's all the other work that should be happening.
Yeah.
Either concurrent or sequential to it. And then,
yeah,
it leaves open a lot of questions.
Let me see. Hold on one second. You can move on to the next question while I do this.
Okay. I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Should I consider a DO school that hasn't had residency matches to the specialty that I'm interested in? I have a specific surgical residency in mind.
I like this question.
Yeah.
There's a DO student, Danielle Ward, on Instagram. She's a DO student matched into plastic surgery today.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a very competitive residency.
For anyone. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you ask me what my thoughts are on picking a medical school, residency match list is nowhere in that kind of list of what you should look at. Medical students, individual medical students, make up a match list. A school doesn't make a match list. The individual students, what they're interested in, how hard they work to prepare themselves for that residency application, the research that they're doing, the network that they're doing, all of that stuff is what makes up a match list. And yes, going to a specific school may open up opportunities, networking opportunities for you, potential research opportunities, but that doesn't mean that a specific student at a school that doesn't have the networking opportunities or research opportunities can't go and make those opportunities for themselves.
Right.
So
that's right.
I don't look at match lists for picking schools.
Yeah, I agree. You're going to make it or break it yourself.
Yep. Going back to the question about
The timeline.
the timeline. This is kind of some secret behind the scenes. This is just a still image of our developer and me talking about timeline stuff and what it may look like in the future inside of Mapped. So this is just a basic kind of layout here. But inside of Mapped, it'll be a separate tab for your timeline, and it would be specific to where you are in your journey. So
yeah, excellent. It's gonna be awesome.
Cool little thing there.
There was a follow-up to that question. Rachel, I don't know if she saw it down toward the bottom.
The MD PhD?
Mm-hmm, right.
Yeah, same timeline.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, same timeline.
Yeah, I mean the big difference in terms of applying is just going to be those extra MD PhD essays.
Essays, right?
That's right.
That's right.
All right, let's see.
I took biochem during fall term and changed it to pass, no pass for multiple reasons. Turns out I received an A in the course, but I can't change it back to a letter grade. Nope. My other grades that term were letter grades. Should I retake biochem?
No, I don't think so. I wouldn't.
Right. Micro question. What's the macro?
Right.
Are
macro.
all your other grades okay?
Yeah.
General.
Yeah, exactly. This is a great example of a micro question.
Yeah.
You need to pull yourself back, look at the big picture, look at the trends and stuff, look at the GPAs like we present them in Mapped, and you'll get the big picture.
The little more micro question is what fall term. So right now we're in spring. So fall term would have been end of 2020.
Right.
The question is, are medical schools going to still accept pass, no pass prereqs for that fall term, or was it only the spring 2020 when COVID first hit? So that's
a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, we're working on querying it, so it's the answer is it depends, right?
Yeah.
I mean, some schools aren't saying
where you're applying.
Some schools are saying, oh my God, I've forgotten what year we're in. Spring 2020 only. Some schools are saying as long as COVID is a thing. And I'm like, well, that's a weird answer because COVID's going to be around forever. I think you mean like, when do we decide it's not a crisis anymore? I don't know. And some schools don't seem to have a policy. So unfortunately, that's not going to be, I mean, you can look up every school that you're interested in and see if they happen to be ones that have answered, but you might get a range of answers. Let's see.
Should I be concerned about prereqs taken 8 years ago if I have had a full semester of upper level science classes this past semester? Playing into that pre-med myth of classes expiring.
Right. No, I mean, I don't think so. I guess the question is, well, the questioner is saying, should I be concerned? So I want to cut it off there and say, should I be concerned about da-da-da? And I guess if we said, yes, you should be concerned, then what would you do? You know, what would that next step be? You're going to go back and retake all the prereqs, or I don't,
Lots of students do that.
Yeah. And I would say, no, don't do that. And just continue again, micro picture. I mean, versus macro, do the, focus in on the big picture. And you should be looking at that in terms of how you did in the prereqs as well as now.
So getting a little bit at that macro, this is a persistent myth, this idea that prereqs expire.
Right.
Scott, having been on the admissions, having been the director of admissions, do you think there's a nugget of truth to that myth? Like, where does that come from?
Well, I think the issue here is what have you, if you did the prereqs 8 years ago and you haven't done anything course-wise since, then that's a different scenario there. That's a different picture. You haven't been in the classroom for 8, 10, 12 years, then that's a problem for a lot of medical schools, because you're out of the sort of the routine of studying and concentrating on learning, etc. So I think that's a different question. It's a very, and that's where maybe that myth kind of comes from, where medical schools may say, well, you're so far away, you need to go back and take classes again. But it wasn't because they expired. It was because we need to see what you can do now.
You still enjoy being a student. You still want to be a student.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not to say, right, that there isn't a school out there or a handful of schools that do have a policy of we want to see your prereqs less than 5 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Could be.
There are some of those schools.
Yeah.
But that's not the norm.
No, agreed. Yeah, I agree with that.
I can't wait until we have that data from Apt.
Right. I think that was the last question we have.
Yeah.
So far.
It's already 6:52.
Yeah. Wow. Hey, it's gone fast. Wow.
I want to share my screen one more time.
Yeah, I know what you're gonna show.
Look at this. Look at this sexy thing.
Oh yeah.
The Premed Playbook Guide to the Medical School Application.
Woohoo!
Super excited. It's on pre-order now at Amazon, probably everywhere else as well. Usually it hits all the
awesome.
websites.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
I'm excited. We're estimated 340 pages, which is I think almost 100 more than my biggest book. So
it's a bigger topic.
It's a big one, yeah. I'm excited.
That title's kind of long though. I don't know about that.
It is, yeah.
That's not fair for all the people who don't know how much that title was agonized over.
So hard.
We've opted for the sake of clarity rather than brevity in that title.
I agree. I completely agree.
7 more letters added on to it.
It's a good book.
Too funny.
I'll add that to the map storefront too.
Nice.
So for those of you who like a one-stop shopping for all your pre-med needs.
Yes. I got some good endorsements from a former director of admissions at UT Southwestern, a former director of admissions at Hofstra, a current admissions member at WashU, and a current director of admissions at University of Illinois. So
nice, well, awesome, man. I heard the UT Southwestern guy's a flake.
Yeah, I debated whether or not adding him because people are gonna laugh when they see it. But
yeah, they'd be like, "What?"
One time he didn't come to work for a whole week just because
he had
no power and no water. I mean, sorry. Oh wait, do we have time for one more? This is interesting.
Sure. Another question regarding MD PhD. Can schools see if you apply MD PhD to other schools, but apply only MD to their school, or vice versa? If so, could that situation be looked at negatively? So basically the question is, can schools see where you applied? Your experiences with TMDSAS.
Yes, in Texas, yes.
Yeah.
And but generally across the country, I think the answer is no. Yeah. So I would.
Why do they share that information at TMDSAS?
It goes back many years, decades, and I think part of it is the idea that so for example, if a student is applying to only 3 of the state of the school, a Texas resident is applying to only 3 of the schools in the state and not the others, then I, as an admissions director, may be like, what, so why are they not applying everywhere? It's so easy. It's one price. It doesn't make
really want to be here.
Yeah. How bad do they really want to be a medical school student? How bad they really want to be a physician? And I actually had a student one time that didn't get in told me, I asked him that very question, and his response was, well, I just didn't think I would want to live in X place for 4 years. And I said, oh, okay. So in other words, you'd rather not be a doctor than go live in X place for 4 years. And he was dumbfounded, like, deer in the headlights look. And he was like, oh my gosh, you mean that's how it's interpreted? And I said, it could be.
Could be. Yeah. It's interesting. I encourage everyone to go Google AAMC traffic rules and the traffic rules that changed a couple of years ago.
Yep.
Schools freaked out about this because they stopped being able to see
where they were
at a
applying.
certain point where students were applying, where they were getting in. There was a lawsuit around, is this fair or not? Or are students being prejudiced because they got into one school and another school is like, I'm not going to offer them an acceptance, even though I was going to. And so it's like a little bit of collusion behind the scenes of what's going on. And so it's very interesting with how everything has transpired. And I don't think it's really been too detrimental. Schools were really worried about it for a while, but it seems like it's okay.
They figured it out. Yeah.
So there's always a lot of concern if schools ask during an interview if I've applied elsewhere. Obviously, you applied elsewhere. That's
right.
That's the whole point of applying to medical school.
Exactly.
So there's not a lot of fear. And then the other thing I've heard, and I have it in the book, I think, is this theory of yield protection. Right. So a school who let's say it's a Texas resident who's a good applicant, right? Strong stats, good extracurriculars, really good application. Texas applicant applying to LSU medical school or a private medical school across state lines. That medical school potentially going, they're a Texas resident. They're very likely going to get into Texas because they're a really good applicant, and I would love to have them.
So I'm not.
And they're going to want to stay in Texas because it's cheaper, and they're a Texas resident. So I'm not even going to offer them an interview, even though they are a really good applicant.
Yep.
So a lot of schools will do that, and this is just big game where you you gotta make sure you're and this is where, right, just looking at stats doesn't help, because if you're like a super strong student, and we've had Dr. Sunny Nakai on the podcast and on National Premed Day last year talking about this, of like, she formerly at University of California, Riverside, they would get these like 517 MCAT 4.0 students applying to UC Riverside because those stats are way above where they're at. And UC Riverside goes, I don't care about your stats, right? Those are really good stats. You're never going to come here. So I'm not even going to bother interviewing you.
Yep.
Random tangent. Sorry.
Very good.
Where can we pre-order the book? I checked Amazon and can't find it. It is there if you just search for Premed Playbook, and then just scroll, because it's brand new. It's probably lower.
Yeah. You'll find it, or you can also, can't you do your name? Can't you search your name?
Yeah. So Premed Playbook, Ryan Gray. The screenshot that I just shared, this is Amazon. It's there. That is Amazon currently live. So go check it out.
Awesome.
All right. Another Acidine in the books.
Yeah, it is.
All right,
it is.
friend.
Good to
Have a
see
good
everybody. Take care,
Bye.
everybody. Bye.